Welcome back. We are diving into our heuristics and bias, setting the stage section here. And when we think about what a heuristic is, what I'd like you to think about is mental shortcuts. Mental shortcuts or general rules of thumb. These often are very helpful in saving mental energy if they get us to the right conclusion. That's a life hack, mental shortcut. However, what we're going to learn here is sometimes these mental shortcuts can take us in the wrong direction, and they can be misleading, leading to bad decisions in general in life, and then also financial decisions. So that's where we say heuristics are mental shortcuts and rules of thumb. And the good news is they simplify our process. These are mental shortcuts and conserve energy. That's as a species what we're trying to do. That's what has sustained us for a long time. And they can also lead us. These heuristics lead into what we know now as biases or biases. So our mental shortcut lead us into biases that the way there's two definitions here. The one we like to think about in our world here is a strong inclination of the mind. A strong inclination of the mind. And the other part of biases where it usually rears some ugliness in life is this preconceived opinion about someone or something. And usually though, when we're thinking about biases in our world of behavioral finance, it's this inclination of the mind. And what we tend to see, what makes something a bias, is that there's a systematic tendency to think in a certain direction. Okay, so the difference between a bias having systematic tendencies and the way technically we would analyze this is if we would have a majority of people that is statistically significant leaning in a different direction, then we start identifying this as a bias. What we see sometimes, though, is what was called the opposite of this, and this is sometimes called the wisdom of crowds. The wisdom of crowds. Sometimes this happens when we're making estimates, and if I have a big bag of M&Ms, you can see that nobody can actually get the right answer. But if I get a large sample of estimates of how many M&Ms are in this monster bag, you will get dangerously close every single time I've ever tested this. And it's not because anybody knows particularly the answer, but in aggregate, the wisdom of crowds lead us to that answer. That is different from a systematic either underestimation or overestimation of the M&Ms. Okay. So when we think a bias, that is coming from heuristics. And what is super interesting and also very challenging in teaching this is this, what was called the bias blind spot. So did you know when 600 people in the United States were asked, are you more, equal to, or less biased than the average American? We had 85% of the respondents say less biased. We had average, another 15%. And then above average, You're going, wait a minute, we're already at 100%. And that's true because 1 out of 600 respondents actually said that they were more biased than the average American. So this is really interesting to me that people think they're not biased or not as biased as everybody else. And this kind of brings us into our previous conversation of confirmation bias. It's not from a lack of seeking information. It's just from going down the wrong path sometime, or just really overinflating their own sense of their knowledge on any particular topic. So, but anyway, this is really interesting. But I want us to remember as we're going through this that if we can identify some of these things, we can override it. It does take some mental effort, though. And that's what is encouraging to me, even though I see this and go, why am I even teaching this when only one person believes that they're more biased than average? And but I come back to reality and say, no, this is actually very beneficial for individuals, and especially if you are teaching other people or if you have clients who also have these same biases and heuristics as well, to be able to identify it and then to override it with the 2 types of thinking that we're going to learn here on the next video. So with that, I'm going to cut off here. And when we come back, we do talk about those 2 types of thinking and how they manifest itself. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on that next video.